He was still standing when the sun rose, but nothing in him looked alive. Out on that patch of scorched earth, a black rancher named Jeremiah Keene leaned against the splintered post like a man carved out of pain. His shirt stuck to his back with dried sweat. His wrists bled where the ropes had eaten through skin, and the ground around his boots was marked with white powder, the line he wasn't allowed to cross, not until the Apache decided whether he deserved to live. The desert didn't show mercy that morning. Neither did the warriors watching him. A child's toy bead hung from his pocket, blue, cracked, the kind Apache mothers stitch for their sons. No one there knew what it meant. No one but him. And maybe that was why he refused to fall, even when his knees shook like dying timber. But here's the part no one sees coming. He wasn't tied to that post because he fought the Apache. He was tied there because he helped one. Before chúng ta tiếp tục, như bạn đang xem câu chuyện này từ bất kỳ thành phố nào trên thế giới, hãy để lại tên thành phố của bạn bên dưới. Hãy theo dõi câu chuyện đến cuối và nhận đăng ký để không bỏ lỡ những bi kịch miễn viện Tây như thế này. Arizona Territory, 1884. The afternoon sun hung low over the Arizona scrublands, turning every ridge and dry wash into a strip of flickering heat. Jeremiah Cross guided his bay gelding along a rutted trail that cut across the desert like an old scar. He rode in silence, his rifle tied to the saddle, a bundle of firewood secured behind him. The man preferred long stretches without voices. Out here, quiet didn't judge him. Quiet didn't remember who he used to be. The wind shifted, carrying with it a faint metallic rattle, something out of place in this empty country. Jeremiah slowed his horse. Ahead, the trail dipped into a shallow ravine, and in that hollow he saw a wagon, tilted at a bad angle. One wheel collapsed beneath it like a broken leg. A woman knelt beside the wreck, her dark hair in a loose braid, strands whipping across her cheek. She didn't look up, didn't call for help, just worked at the shattered spokes with the grim focus of someone refusing to admit defeat. Her clothes marked her clearly, Apache, with turquoise beads catching bits of sunlight. Jeremiah's jaw tightened. Everything in him said, keep riding. He had spent years avoiding trouble with Apache bands, years proving to himself, if no one else, that he wasn't the same man who once rode with the Buffalo Soldiers and followed orders he'd never forgive himself for. Getting mixed up with a stranded Apache woman on a lonely trail? That was the opposite of staying invisible. But he reined in anyway. His horse snorted, uneasy at the scent of sweat and splintered wood. Jeremiah dismounted slowly, boots crunching against the dry earth. The woman's hands stilled for the first time. She lifted her head and looked at him, really looked, and the space between them felt like a blade drawn slow from its sheath. Her eyes were unreadable, but not afraid. Jeremiah cleared his throat. "Wheel's gone clean through the hub," he said. "Won't take a patch. Needs bracing and a new spoke." She didn't answer. She didn't back away either. Just shifted enough to give him room. He knelt opposite her and set his tools out without ceremony. His hands were steady, practiced. Fixing broken things came easy. fixing himself never had. For a long moment, the only sound was the rasp of wood and the low groan of leather as he threaded rawhide cord through the new brace. He worked the way he always did, quiet, methodical, but his pulse beat harder than it should have, because up close the beadwork on her sleeve pulled memory like a hook behind his ribs. Same pattern he'd once seen on a small medicine pouch, clutched in the hand of a boy he hadn't been able to save. A boy whose breath had gone thin under a sky full of smoke. Jeremiah blinked the memory away. The woman watched him the whole time, studying each movement like she was memorizing how he tied knots, how he tested pressure, how he breathed. Not grateful, not suspicious either. Just measuring. When the wheel was secure enough to carry weight, Jeremiah rose and brushed dust from his palms. "That'll hold," he said, "long enough to reach better ground." She stood, too, testing the wheel by rolling the wagon a few inches back and forth. Then she nodded once, no more than a flick of her chin. He stepped back toward his horse. He should have mounted, tipped his hat, and ridden off without looking over his shoulder. Instead, he said, "There's a rancher 2 miles east, Silas Brandt. You don't want to cross his land. He's been stirring trouble. Folks go missing around his trails." Her brow tightened, the slightest shift, but enough to say she understood his words, and that she also didn't trust them. She reached for the reins, climbed onto the wagon seat, and set her jaw like she intended to face the whole desert alone if she had to. Jeremiah hesitated, the reins loose in his hand. He didn't ask her name. She didn't ask his. They shared nothing except a patch of sunlight and the uneasy knowledge that they'd crossed paths on a day when neither wanted company. The woman flicked the reins. The wagon creaked, wheels turning slow but steady. She didn't look back. Jeremiah watched her go until the dust swallowed her shape. He felt something tug in his chest, faint, unwelcome. A reminder he wasn't as hard or closed off as he pretended. He mounted his horse and turned toward home. The trail stretched empty before him, but for the first time in months, he didn't feel quite so alone. The sun dipped lower. The wind carried the scent of dust and something else, something restless. Jeremiah clicked his tongue and urged the horse forward. A broken wheel fixed, upon, warning given, and a feeling, low and uneasy, that he hadn't ridden out of that ravine entirely unchanged. The wagon rattles farther down the trail, shrinking into a wavering silhouette against the heat. Jeremiah keeps watching long after he should have turned away. Dust settles slow on the road, the last trace of the Apache woman fading into desert shimmer. He lets out a slow breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. He taps his horse forward. The bay steps uneasy, as if picking up on something Jeremiah can't yet name. The sun spills over the rocky ridges in sheets of gold, bright enough to sting his eyes. He nudges the brim of his hat lower and tries to shake off the feeling crawling beneath his ribs. He shouldn't have stopped. Should have kept his head down like he's done for years. Stay quiet. Stay unknown. That's how a man stays out of trouble in this part of Arizona. But that beadwork. He presses a hand against his thigh, trying to steady the memory before it claws all the way to the surface. That pattern on her sleeve, tight rows of turquoise and cream, he's seen it before. Held it, actually. The memory hits like a boot to the chest. A medicine pouch. Small. Warm from the hand of a boy who couldn't have been older than 9. Smoke choking the sky. Cries echoing inside his skull long after the gunfire stopped. Jeremiah remembering the boy lifting that pouch a few inches, as though offering it for protection. Not knowing no charm could stop the bullets that followed. Jeremiah sucks in a breath, sharp and angry at himself for remembering. He urges his horse into a trot. The quicker he gets back to his cabin, the quicker he can bury today under routine, stacking firewood, mending tack, anything that keeps his hands busy and his thoughts quiet. But the trail bends, and the wind changes direction. He hears the wagon before he sees it. The wheels creak in the distance, slower this time. Hesitant. He rounds a clump of mesquite and finds the woman again. She's stopped the wagon at a fork in the road, staring east where the land slopes toward Silas Brandt's ranch. Her profile is carved sharp against the late-day sun. She doesn't move when Jeremiah approaches, but he can see tension in her shoulders, see how tightly she grips the reins. He draws his horse alongside her wagon, but not too close. He clears his throat softly. That road ain't safe. She turns her head a fraction, eyes narrowing. She waits. That's her way. Silent first, judgment after. Jeremiah points at the distant ridge. Brandt's land runs all through there. Man's been setting traps. Folks go missing, stock too. He's got men riding under false colors, Apache colors, trying to start panic. Her gaze flickers. Barely, but enough that he knows she's listening. I ain't saying this for thanks, Jeremiah adds. Just don't want trouble finding you on account of a wrong turn. The woman studies him for a long, still moment. The air feels stretched thin between them. She finally speaks, her voice low, accent soft but edged in, steel. Why warn me? Jeremiah doesn't answer right away. The honest reason sits heavy in his throat. Because that pattern on her sleeve belonged to a child he couldn't save. Because ghosts don't stay buried, no matter how deep a man digs. But he only says, it's cruel country out there. Brandt makes it crueler. She holds his eyes, not with gratitude, but with an appraisal he can't read. Like she's weighing whether the truth he's giving her is real or another shape of deception. Then she shifts the reins. The wagon creaks as she angles it west, away from Brandt's territory. She guides her horse with a firm hand, nodding once. Not thanks, not approval, just acknowledgement. Jeremiah turns his horse to leave, and she speaks again. You carry something, she says. Something heavy. He stiffens. Everybody does. No, she replies quietly. Some weights choose their carriers. Yours does. He swallows, heat prickling the back of his neck. Before he can answer, she snaps the reins and the wagon rolls onward. Jeremiah watches her go. Dust spirals behind her wheels, drifting like smoke. The sky is reddening, bleeding across the desert. He feels the day turning colder even though the air still burns. He could ride east, warn others. He could track Brant's men, prove they're stirring trouble. But that's not his fight. Not anymore. He spent years walking away from conflicts that weren't his. Still, something about this woman wedges beneath his skin like a splinter. He wheels his horse and heads toward home. The gelding picks up speed, hooves thudding against hard earth. The land stretches empty ahead of him, wide and unforgiving. It should feel familiar, comforting even. But it doesn't. Not tonight. Not after turquoise beads tore open memories he'd sworn he'd buried. Jeremiah rides faster, as though distance might outpace guilt. But guilt has always been the better rider, and he knows, deep in the pit of him, that he won't be leaving this day behind so easily. Dawn comes slow across the desert, washing the world in pale fire. Jeremiah doesn't notice the first light. He's been awake most of the night, staring at the ceiling beams, replaying the beadwork on that woman's sleeve over and over until the memory feels raw enough to bleed. Matteo sleeps curled on his cot. Little Lucia tucked against her brother, small fingers still gripping the corner of Jeremiah's old shirt, like she's afraid he'll vanish if she lets go. Jeremiah watches them a long moment, the rise and fall of their breaths steady in the dim light. He forces himself up. Coffee won't make sense of anything, but it'll give his hands something to do. He steps to the stove. That's when he hears it. Not the wind. Not a distant hawk, hooves. Many. A low, rolling thunder that rattles the boards beneath his feet. Jeremiah's spine locks. He grabs the rifle from the wall without thinking and moves to the window. He eases one shutter open the width of a fingernail, and the world outside his cabin stops breathing. Warriors. Hundreds. Painted faces stare back at him through the rising light, red and black streaks cutting across their skin. Spears and bows held steady, horses shifting in perfect silence. They ring the cabin so tightly that the earth looks stitched shut by hoof prints. Jeremiah's breath stalls. This isn't a patrol. This is an army. Matteo wakes with a jolt at the vibration of the ground. "Pa," he whispers. Jeremiah lowers the shutter, slow as prayer. "Stay close," he says. "Keep Lucia behind you." The boy obeys without question. His wide eyes flash toward the door, toward the corners of the room like danger might seep through the cracks. Lucia clings to her brother's sleeve, her lower lip trembling. Jeremiah forces calm into his voice, even though his blood is roaring in his ears. "Nobody moves unless I say." He moves back to the window. Another slit. Another angle. And there she is. Tala. Sitting tall on her horse at the front of the formation, face carved in stone-cold calm. The same braid. The same turquoise beads glinting at her neck. She doesn't raise a hand. Doesn't look away. Jeremiah's stomach knots. "So that's it," he mutters. "Help a stranger. Get surrounded by her whole damn nation." He wants to believe it's a misunderstanding, wants to believe yesterday meant something other than this. But there's no kindness in the way those warriors sit their horses. No welcome, only judgment. Koda stands beside Tala, broad shoulders rising like a wall. His paint is harsher, slashes of crimson crossing from temple to jaw. The kind of paint a man wears when mercy isn't on the table. Jeremiah feels the weight of every choice he's made in the last 24 hours crush down on him. He turns to the children. "Under the table," he says. "Now." They crawl fast, eyes wide, breaths shallow. Jeremiah forces himself to breathe slower than his fear wants him to. He grips the rifle. Not to fire, but to hold on to something that feels solid in a world suddenly sliding sideways. A deep call rings out from outside, low, commanding, echoing across the circle like a drumbeat. Then another. Not shouts, not threats. Something older, ritualistic. "Pa," Mateo whispers again. "Why are they here?" Jeremiah doesn't answer, because the truth is, he doesn't know, not exactly, but he can guess. Either they think he took Tala, or they think he touched something sacred by helping her. Either way, both are enough to get a man killed without a second thought. He creeps toward the door, checking the latch, feeling the heat of the rising sun bleeding through the wood. Sweat gathers along his back. The hooves stop. The silence that follows is unnatural, like the desert itself is holding breath. Jeremiah risks another glance. Koda urges his horse forward until he stands only 20 paces from the door. He raises a spear overhead, slow, deliberate. Every other warrior turns their eyes toward the cabin. Lucia whimpers under the table. Mateo pulls her close. Jeremiah swallows, throat dry as sand. Koda slams the spear into the ground. The sound cracks across the clearing like lightning. Even from inside, Jeremiah feels it vibrate through his bones. A message without words. Come out. Now. Jeremiah steps back from the window, his heartbeat a hammer inside his ribs. He looks at his rifle, then at the table where the children hide. Then at the door he knows he can't stay behind much longer. If he fires, he dies. If he stays inside, they'll burn him out. If he steps outside, he has no idea what comes next. But hiding never saved anyone he loved. Not in the past. Not now. He closes his eyes. Stay quiet, he tells the children. Whatever happens, stay down. Then he moves to the door, hand on the latch, metal warm from the growing sun. The warriors outside don't move, don't blink. Jeremiah draws one slow breath, another. Then he pulls the door open and steps into the waiting dawn. The door swings open, and the morning light hits Jeremiah like a blow. He steps into it slowly, hands empty, boots scraping the dirt. The air is crisp, but the tension makes it feel hot enough to scorch. Hundreds of painted eyes track his every move. Koda sits atop his horse like a carved idol, immovable, implacable. His chest rises with controlled breath. The paint slashed across his face, gleaming red in the sunlight. He doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't have to. When he shouts, the whole desert listens. He barks a command in Apache, low and sharp. A warrior rides forward, spear angled, and points it at Jeremiah. Then he speaks English, rough, thickly accented. You take her. You take our Tala. You hide her. You steal cattle. You lie. Jeremiah's heartbeat hammers behind his ribs. I didn't take anybody, he says, voice steadier than he feels. I fixed her wagon. That's all. The warrior snarls like the words stink. Coda lifts a hand. Silence snaps tight instantly. He addresses Jeremiah in Apache. Tone scorching, controlled fury buried under ritual. Tala translates. She rides forward a few paces, face unreadable as stone. Her voice is calm, too calm. That's how a person speaks when their tribe is watching every breath. He says, she begins, you touched what is ours. You wandered close to our land. You approached me without permission. You left your mark near where cattle disappeared. Jeremiah clenches his jaw. Disappeared? Brant's the one stealing stock. The warriors don't blink. They simply stare at him like he's a specimen pinned to a board. Tala continues, her tone harder, sharper. Coda says you hide me, that you held me in your cabin through the night. Jeremiah stares at her. For a moment he feels the ground slide out from under him. You know damn well that isn't true, he says. Her eyes flicker just once, a tiny tremor of conflict. But the warriors can't see that. Only Jeremiah can. Coda leans forward in his saddle and points toward the cabin. He speaks again, this time his rage leaking through the formality. Tala translates. You have until the sun lifts above that ridge, she nods to the east, to step forward and answer before the circle. If you do not, her jaw tightens. They will burn the cabin, with you inside. Lucia whimpers inside the house. Jeremiah hears it even from here. His blood chills. Tala, he says under his breath. Tell him there are children inside. She doesn't. Not at first. Coda is watching her too closely. Jeremiah wants to shout, wants to yank the truth from someone's throat, but he forces it down. Rage won't help. Panic won't help. Only time. And he doesn't have much of that. Coda lifts his spear again. The message is clear. The ultimatum stands. Jeremiah retreats a step toward the door. He doesn't turn his back on the riders. He knows better. Only when he reaches the threshold does he slip inside and shut the door. Mateo rushes to him. Pa, what's happening? Are those Apache? Are they? Jeremiah kneels, gripping the boy's shoulders. Listen to me, both of you. Go behind the water barrels. Stay low. Don't move until I tell you. Lucia's eyes are wet. Are they gonna hurt us? Jeremiah swallows hard. Not if I can help it. He stands and paces, the rifle heavy in his hand. He could fight. He's fought before. But he's not surviving 400 armed riders with 2 children in the house. Pa, Mateo whispers. Maybe we run. Jeremiah's breath shudders. The boy doesn't understand what running costs a man. He's run before. Run from orders. Run from guilt. Run from everything except the two kids depending on him. He grips Mateo's chin gently. If we run, they'll shoot us in the back before we reach the river. This cabin won't protect us either. He draws a long breath. Only truth might. Lucia crawls into his lap, burying her face in his shirt. Jeremiah holds her tight. For a moment, he just breathes her in, the single reminder that he isn't the monster some men say he is. Then, a voice outside, soft, barely audible. Jeremiah. Tala. He rises, steps to the window. She sits her horse a little farther back now, away from Koda's shadow. She doesn't look at him, but her words slide through the slat in the shutter like wind. If you come out with your hands empty, she murmurs, I will not let them kill you first. Not a promise, not safety, just a delay. But sometimes a delay is the only thread between life and death. Jeremiah closes his eyes. The choice tears at him. Stay inside and the children die with him. Step out, and he might buy them time. He kneels again, pulling Mateo and Lucia close. You listen to me, he whispers. No matter what you hear, stay hidden. I love you, both of you. Lucia clutches him tighter. Mateo's breath shakes. Jeremiah rises. His hands tremble as he sets the rifle down. He feels naked without it, but he forces himself forward. One step, another. He grips the latch. He whispers a prayer he hasn't spoken in years. Then he opens the door and walks out into the circle of warriors, hands lifted, unarmed, as the sun climbs over the ridge. Jeremiah stands alone in the clearing, the sun catching on the raised boughs aimed at his chest. He doesn't lift his gaze to meet them. He watches the dust at his feet instead. Dry, pale, almost peaceful. Strange how the ground can stay calm while a man is being judged. Koda signals sharply. Two warriors dismount, stride forward, and seize Jeremiah by the arms. They don't tie him. They don't need to. A man with no weapon and two children inside hardly counts as a threat. Bring him in, Koda growls. Jeremiah stiffens. Inside. Why? Tala steps forward. They want to hear you speak where no arrow can interrupt. He can't tell if that's mercy or another trap. The warriors push him toward the door, and Jeremiah feels his pulse jump when he sees Mateo's small eyes peeking from under the barrel. He gives one slow shake of his head. Stay hidden. The Apache enter first, checking corners, checking shadows. Only when they nod does Jeremiah step in. The cabin feels small now, too small for fear to breathe properly. Mateo and Lucia huddle in the far corner, eyes wide as saucers. Tala's gaze flickers to them. She says nothing. Koda steps inside last, filling the doorway like a closing gate. More warriors crowd behind him, enough to swallow the sunlight. Jeremiah stands in the center of the room. His throat is dry. You want answers, he says. Fine. Ask. Coda speaks first. Short, harsh sounds that hit like thrown stones. Tala translates, each word tight as pulled wire. Tell us why you took me from the trail. I didn't, Jeremiah snaps. I fixed your damn wheel. You drove off. She did not return home, Tala says. You were the last man seen near her wagon. Jeremiah feels heat rising under his collar. You think I can hide a whole woman and a wagon in the middle of open desert? The warriors don't move. Don't blink. Coda speaks again. A cold accusation. Tala's voice doesn't waver. You took cattle. Your mark was found near the stolen herd. Jeremiah's laugh is sharp and humorless. My mark? I've lost cattle myself the past few weeks. Whoever took them is using my brand to stir trouble. Brant, most likely. His eyes jump to Tala. I warned you about him yesterday. Silence slides heavy through the cabin. Coda taps his chest with 2 fingers and mutters another command. Tala translates. He says your warning could be cover, that you speak Brant's name to hide your own. Jeremiah's temper spikes. If I were guilty, would I come out with empty hands? Would I stand here with 2 children behind me? Tala's eyes dart to Mateo and Lucia again. Jeremiah notices the faint softening, like a hairline crack in a wall. But Coda doesn't soften. He steps closer, towering over Jeremiah. His breath smells of smoke and the long night spent riding. He says something low, something that doesn't need translation to sting. Tala hesitates. Jeremiah narrows his gaze. Go on, say it. Her voice drops. He says men like you lie with your boots on. Jeremiah's jaw tightens. Men like me? What's that mean? Tala doesn't answer. Jeremiah exhales slowly. Fine. You want the truth? Here it is. He lifts both hands, palms open. I fixed her wagon because she needed help. That's all. I didn't ask her name. Didn't follow her. Didn't touch anything that wasn't broken. Coda scoffs. Tala translates obediently, but her eyes flick to Jeremiah's, studying, weighing. Another warrior steps forward and drops something onto the table, a piece of broken rawhide cord. Jeremiah recognizes it instantly, the one he used to bind Tala's wheel. Coda points at it and spits a single sharp word. He says the cord proves you touched her wagon, Tala explains. Of course I touched her wagon, Jeremiah retorts. I was fixing it. That is the violation, she says quietly. Jeremiah blinks. What? Tala's voice is brittle now, like she hates the words even as she speaks them. You handled property belonging to a respected woman of our people without permission. To them, that means intention, and intention means threat. Jeremiah stares at her. I fixed a broken wheel. You crossed a line, she says simply. Something inside Jeremiah snaps. Then why'd you let me fix it? Why didn't you stop me? For the first time, Tala's mask cracks. Barely. A flicker of something sharp behind her eyes. Guilt, maybe, or truth she can't say aloud. Coda steps forward again, voice booming. Tala translates. He demands your full account, every detail of yesterday. Jeremiah hesitates, because the real details include something he's kept buried deeper than any brand or cattle mark, something that makes him choke every time he tries to name it. But the circle outside won't leave until the truth is spoken, or until blood spills. He draws a slow breath. Fine, he says. You want everything? You're gonna get it. He glances at the children, small, terrified, listening. Then he begins. I used to ride with the 9th Cavalry, he says. Buffalo soldiers. The room goes still. Tala freezes. Coda's eyes narrow like a blade being honed. Jeremiah forces himself to continue. And if you want to know why I stopped, you're gonna hear some things neither one of us is proud of. Outside, a horse snorts. Inside, the air thickens. The real trial is about to start. For a long moment, nobody moves. Jeremiah stands in the center of the cabin, the words "buffalo soldier" hanging in the air like smoke from a shot that hasn't landed yet. Tala's face doesn't change, but her fingers tighten slightly on the edge of the table. Coda's jaw locks, the muscles bunching like coiled rope. Jeremiah knows what they're thinking. He's thought the same things about himself. 1 year, he says quietly. That's how long I rode with them. 1 year too damn long. Coda barks something sharp. A warrior steps closer. Hands drift toward bows. Tala raises a hand. Let him speak. The room holds still again. Jeremiah's lungs burn. Talking about this feels like dragging barbed wire through his throat. There was a raid, he says. We were told a band had attacked settlers near the San Pedro. Orders were to fall in fast. Put down anyone resisting. Take captives when possible. He shakes his head. It was a lie. Settlers weren't attacked. They just wanted the land cleared. Tala's breath catches, barely a sound, but Jeremiah hears it. He makes himself continue. We hit the camp at night. They were sleeping, families, children. His voice cracks, but only once. I fired high, overheads. So did a couple others. Didn't matter. The rest didn't miss. Mateo and Lucia hold each other in the corner. Their eyes are too young to hear this, but there's no turning back now. Jeremiah wipes a hand down his face. I found a boy under a wagon, maybe 9, maybe younger. He had a pouch, same beadwork you wear. His gaze flicks to Tala. He held it out like it could protect him, or ask me to protect him. Tala doesn't move. Her eyes glisten, but she blinks it away before it can fall. Jeremiah's voice lowers. He died anyway. Silence clamps down on the cabin. Coda steps forward until he's nearly chest to chest with Jeremiah. He snarls something low and venomous. Tala translates without looking up. He says you carry the blood of our children on your hands. Jeremiah doesn't flinch. Yes, he says. I do. Coda's nostrils flare. He raises his fist, ready to strike, but Tala speaks first. A single sharp word. Coda freezes. She turns to Jeremiah. "Why tell this?" she asks. "It gives you no mercy." "Because hiding it won't change what happened," he says. "And because if I don't say it now, you'll never believe anything else I say." Tala studies him. Long, deep, like she's trying to see if he's telling truth or performing it. Then she exhales and shifts her stance. "You should know," she says slowly. "My people have blood on their hands too." Coda snaps toward her, eyes lightning bright with outrage. He barks a warning. Tala doesn't back down. Her voice sharpens. "He deserves full truth, same as we demanded it." She looks at Jeremiah. "Coda burned a settler's ranch 2 months ago," she says. "He believed they killed his cousin. But the attack was done by white men wearing Apache paint. They wanted blame. They wanted fear." Coda rounds on her now, shouting something guttural. The room shakes with his rage. Tala fires back in Apache, words fast, slicing like thrown blades. Jeremiah can't understand the language, but he understands the tone. Truth isn't a betrayal unless you fear what it reveals. Coda's chest heaves. His hand trembles near his knife, but he doesn't draw. A warrior behind him mutters uneasily. Another shifts his feet. Doubt moves through the group like wildfire. Jeremiah turns to Tala. "So neither side's innocent?" "No," she says. "We aren't." Their eyes lock. Something old and heavy shifts between them. Guilt recognizing guilt. Grief recognizing grief. Jeremiah breaks the silence. "If it was Brant's men wearing paint, then he's stealing stock, killing settlers, starting fires, and blaming it all on you." Tala nods once. "That is what I suspect." Coda growls. He says something sharp, stabbing a finger at Jeremiah. Tala translates. He says talk is wind, proof is stone. Without proof, none of this matters. Jeremiah steps forward. "Then let's get proof. My cattle were taken. If we find them, my mark on them, or any sign of Brant, we can show both sides the truth." The warriors murmur, some interested, some furious. Coda spits in the dirt, a sign of contempt. But he doesn't say no. Tala glances at him, then back at Jeremiah. "You would ride with us," she says, "after admitting what you did?" Jeremiah's answer is steady. "Because I won't spend the rest of my life running from the worst parts of myself, and because someone's using my name to start a war." Another long silence. Finally, Coda jerks his chin. A harsh, reluctant assent. Tala turns to Jeremiah. "We ride to the grazing basin," she says. "If your cattle are there, we will see what truths they carry." Jeremiah nods once, grim, determined. The trial isn't over. It's only changed shape. The trail rises into broken hills, the kind where sound travels strangely, quick one moment, swallowed the next. Jeremiah rides at the center of the formation, boxed in by warriors whose silence feels heavier than their weapons. Tala rides ahead with Coda. the two of them arguing in low, clipped Apache. Jeremiah can't understand the words, but the tension needs no translation. Coda gestures toward the horizon, sharp, accusing. Tala shakes her head each time, steady, refusing to rush judgment. Jeremiah keeps his eyes on the ground. He studies every track, every scuff, every scrap of broken brush. Not because he expects to learn much from them, but because it keeps him from thinking about the boy under the wagon. The beads, the pouch, the memory hits with every hoofbeat. By mid-morning the land flattens. A wash of dry grass spreads out before them, broken only by an outcrop of shale. And something else. Jeremiah sees it first. A fence line that shouldn't exist. Rough posts, fresh rope. A makeshift pen built in a hurry by someone who didn't care what the land wanted to be. The warriors tense. Hands go to bows. Coda raises a fist, halting the line. He stares at the pen like he expects it to explode. Jeremiah dismounts before anyone tells him to. His boots hit the dirt with a soft thud. He walks forward, slow, careful, hands open. The smell hits him next. Cattle. But not just cattle. His cattle. His heart stumbles in his chest. He steps closer until he can see the hides clearly. Sunburned, dust-caked, brand marks visible beneath the dirt. The cross. His brand. Except he crouches, runs 2 fingers over the mark. The edge of the C is uneven, like the metal was filed recently. The crossbar sits too low, too thick. Whoever stamped these animals didn't know the shape well enough to fake it clean. He looks up sharply. "These aren't mine," he says. "Not originally." Coda snorts. Brand says otherwise. "It's forged," Jeremiah says. "Sloppy work. Someone used my mark to throw blame." Tala comes beside him. She crouches too, tracing the edges with the back of a knuckle. Her eyes narrow. "This was done in haste," she murmurs. "Not by a rancher." Coda spits in the dirt. He snaps something angry at Tala. She doesn't back away. "If you rush to accuse now, you become what they expect you to be," she tells him sharply. "Blind, predictable." Coda's face darkens, but he says nothing. Jeremiah moves along the fence. A stack of crates sits behind the pen, half covered with a tarp. He pulls it back. Kerosene cans, brand new. And beside them, cloth scraps, torn from a bandana, a blue one, with the emblem of a saloon in town pressed onto the corner. Jeremiah feels his stomach drop. "Brant," he whispers. Tala stiffens. "You are certain?" "I've seen his boys wear these," Jeremiah says. "They use kerosene for their night runs. Drives cattle, covers tracks, makes fires look accidental." Coda strides over, yanking one of the bandana scraps from Jeremiah's hand. He shouts something furious, waving the cloth like it's a hanging sentence. Tala translates with a tight voice. He says this is enough. We ride to Brant's camp. We burn it. We end the lie with fire. Jeremiah stands. "If you attack now, you'll prove his story," he says. He wants it to look like Apache raiders hit him. He's baiting you. Coda steps closer, nose to nose with Jeremiah. The air between them vibrates with threat. Jeremiah can smell dust on his skin, blood on his breath. Old fights carried forward into this one. Tala steps between them. Enough! Coda glowers, chest heaving. Jeremiah points to the false brand. You've wanted blood for months, he says. If you take it the wrong way, Brant walks free. And he keeps killing, using your name, using my mark. The pen creaks in the hot wind. One cow lows softly, almost like it knows it's been turned into a weapon. Tala's voice drops. What do you suggest? Jeremiah meets her gaze. We go to town, to Brant, not with arrows at his throat, with evidence at his feet, and a deputy who's too tired of lying to cover for him anymore. Tala's eyes flicker. She knows who he means. Ray Hollis. We bring a white witness, Jeremiah says, one they can't dismiss. Coda jabs a finger into Jeremiah's chest and barks a bitter string of words. Tala translates. He says if you're wrong, he will take your scalp himself. Jeremiah doesn't blink. If I'm wrong, he says, I won't stop him. The warriors murmur, some approving, some doubtful. Tala steps back, weighing the choice. The truth is fragile. The path ahead is narrow. One wrong move and all of them die. Finally, she speaks. We ride to town. Coda curses, but he turns his horse. Warriors fall into formation, reluctant, simmering, ready to explode if Jeremiah falters even once. Tala rides beside him. You risk much, she says quietly, more than you owe anyone. Jeremiah watches the false brand burned into the hides one last time. That's the problem, he replies. I owe too much already. They ride, and the truth rides with them. Jeremiah feels the weight of every rider behind him as they approach the edge of dry mesa. The town looks the same as it always has. Dust in the wind, shutters rattling, the saloon door clapping open and shut like a lazy heartbeat. But today, the place feels different, like it's holding its breath. Tala stops the warriors 100 yards out. Only you enter, she says. If we ride in, Brant will scream attack. Coda crosses his arms. He mutters something sharp, ending with Jeremiah's name said like a curse. Tala doesn't translate that part. Jeremiah nods. Keep out of sight. He walks the rest of the way alone. Each step feels heavier than his boots. People on the street watch him pass. Some curious, some cautious. One or two stepping into doorways like his shadow might burn. He doesn't blame them. Stories spread faster than dust in a windstorm. And lately, every story about Apache raiders has his name embedded in it one way or another. The sheriff's office sits near the well. Fresh paint, fresh boards, fresh lies. Jeremiah pushes the door open. Brant is behind the desk, leaning back in his chair like a man who owns the room, the land, and the sky above it. Ray Hollis stands by the map board, arms crossed, jaw tight. He looks like a man who hasn't slept in days. Brant glances up, smiles. Well now, he drawls. Didn't expect to see you walking into town bold as brass. I hear tell Apache raiders been sniffing around your place. He tilts his head. Shame. Should have built a taller fence. Jeremiah steps forward. We found something. Brant raises an eyebrow. Oh? Hope it ain't another one of your cows wandering off. Hard to keep track when you spend all day playing rescue hero for savages. Ray stiffens. Jeremiah keeps his voice even. Someone built a false pen out past the shale ridges. Cattle branded with my cross. But the brand's wrong. Crooked, fresh, cut by someone who didn't know my mark. Brant's smile thins. That's so. Jeremiah reaches into his coat and sets the blue cloth scrap on the desk. The saloon emblem catches the light. Brant doesn't look at it. Ray does. He steps closer. His eyes flick from the cloth to Jeremiah, then to Brant. Where'd you find that? Next to your boss's kerosene cans, Jeremiah says. Same kind used on the burned ranch. The one blamed on Apache. A flicker crosses Ray's face. Guilt, recognition, maybe fear. Brant chuckles. Kerosene? You think that means something? Everybody uses kerosene. Hell, Hollis uses it more than I do. Ray's jaw tightens. Brant sees it, keeps pressing. Jeremiah leans forward. Brant, you used my mark, my cattle. You staged raids. You sent men in Apache paint to burn white homes so you could grab land and point fingers. Brant stands slowly, eyes narrowing. Careful, boy. I'm done being careful. A long silence fills the room. Ray shifts his weight. He's breathing harder now. Brant notices. Ray, he says lightly, tell this wild fool he doesn't know what he's talking about. Tell him this is just a misunderstanding. Ray doesn't speak. Brant's tone sharpens. Ray. Still nothing. Jeremiah watches the deputy closely. Ray Hollis has always been a quiet man, a good shot, a man who bends instead of breaks, until something inside him decides the bending is done. Jeremiah sees that moment arrive. Ray slowly draws his revolver, not at Jeremiah, at Brant. Brant freezes. You've lost your damn mind. Ray swallows, throat tight. I've carried water for you long enough, but not for murder. His voice wavers but doesn't break. I'll testify. Army, judge, marshal, whoever comes, I'll tell them everything. Brant's expression twists, peeling back the easy charm, showing the hard gristle underneath. You fool, he hisses. He flicks 2 fingers. It's the smallest movement, but the door to the back room slams open. 2 hired guns appear, rifles ready, barrels lifting. And right outside, Jeremiah hears it. The soft, unmistakable sound of Apache bows being drawn. Brant smiles again, but now there's no warmth in it at all. Looks like we got ourselves a standoff, he says. White folks inside, savages outside. All I gotta do is yell attack, and history writes itself. Jeremiah steps back toward the window. He knows Tala is waiting out there, hidden among the rooftops and shadows. He also knows one wrong move will turn Dry Mesa into an echo of every massacre he's ever tried to forget. "Brant," Jeremiah says quietly, "don't do this." "Oh, but I will," Brant answers. "Because dead men don't testify, and when the dust clears, folks will remember only one thing. Apaches came to burn this town." He lifts a hand. Jeremiah sees the decision forming, sees how close it is, sees the spark of a war nobody will survive. And he realizes something. The next second might break the whole territory. Dusk bleeds into night by the time they reach Brant's outer pasture. The land stretches wide and empty, broken only by the flicker of campfires and the silhouettes of armed men pacing the fence line. Brant's ranch ain't a ranch tonight. It's a fort. Jeremiah crouches behind a mesquite ridge, breathing slow, steady. Tala is beside him, eyes narrowed, reading distances, shadows, wind. Behind them, 30 Apache warriors wait in complete silence. Not a twig snaps, not a horse snorts. Their stillness feels carved from stone. Coda moves like a blade through the ranks, sharp, restless, wanting war in the worst way. He has not forgiven Tala for choosing caution earlier. He has not forgiven Jeremiah for existing. Jeremiah looks out over the valley again. Brant's men are armed heavy, too heavy for a rancher expecting cattle thieves. Torches burn along the fences, and every few minutes a rider circles the herd that shouldn't even be here. The branded cattle shift restlessly inside the holding paddock. Their breath steams in the cooling air. Their hides bear Jeremiah's mark, but each one is a lie, forged for a war that Brant wants to start. Jeremiah clenches his jaw. He feels the weight of the lie like iron in his chest. Tala whispers, "If they fire first, my father will not hold the warriors back." Jeremiah nods, and Brant knows that. A shout rises from the ranch house. Jeremiah sees lanterns swing. More riders gather. The tension in the air pulls tight like a noose. He finds Ray near the barn, lit by a single lantern. The deputy is shouting something, a warning to Brant's men, but they're not listening. They're loading rifles, passing powder, tightening saddle cinches. Jeremiah murmurs, "He's trying." Tala answers, "He is one man. One voice cannot stop fear." Jeremiah studies the setup. Fires, men in position, cattle pushed toward the front fencing, and then something worse. Brant himself appears, striding out with a torch. He thrusts it into a trough of oil-soaked brush. Flames roar up, throwing jagged light across the valley. He's setting the grass. He's going to push the smoke toward the Apache position, blind them, split them, make them look like attackers stumbling through a firestorm. Jeremiah exhales sharply. "Damn it!" Tala stiffens. He means to start the war tonight. Across the ridgeline, Apache bows lift, silent, ready. Coda murmurs a low order in Apache. Jeremiah steps forward instantly. "No," he says, "not yet." Coda turns on him, fury burning in his eyes. He spits a string of harsh words. Tala translates in a whisper. "He says you have no place giving orders. Blood should answer blood." Jeremiah stares back at Coda. If you fire now, Brant wins. Every man in town will swear you attacked first. The army will ride. Your children will starve before winter ends. Coda's chest heaves. His hand goes to his knife, but he doesn't strike. Not yet. Upso, loud crack splits the air. Gunfire. A warning? No. A signal. Brant shouts something from the front porch. His men raise weapons. The cattle in the pen panic, pressing against the fences. Flames spit and snap, throwing sparks into the dark. Tala whispers, "It begins." "No," Jeremiah says, "not like this." A single idea drops into him like a stone falling through a well. Heavy, terrifying, true. He stares at the panicked cattle, the fake cross brand. His name turned into a weapon. He breathes out, slow, hard. "Tala," he says quietly. "Translate this. Every word." She watches him warily. "What are you doing?" "What has to be done?" He steps forward, toward the herd. Coda's arm shoots out, blocking him. "Where do you think you go?" Jeremiah's voice hardly rises, but something in it makes even the warriors still. "To end this lie." He walks past Coda. Tala follows, whispering fierce to the warriors behind her. Jeremiah doesn't know the words, but he feels the shift. Something between disbelief and awe. He reaches the edge of the pen. The cattle thrash nervously. Smoke drifts low. Brant's men shout. Rifles raise. Jeremiah lights the torch Tala hands him. The flame flares. He looks at the herd, at the brand burned onto their hides, the brand meant to paint him as murderer, raider, traitor. He whispers, "Not tonight." He tosses the torch into the hay. Fire roars up in an instant. The herd screams, surging. Flames lick along the forged brand marks first, eating the lie before the rest catches. Shouts erupt across the ranch. Brant swears. His men scatter, unable to see through the sudden blaze and stampede. The pen collapses as cattle crash through it, running wild, carrying fire into the grass around the ranch. The valley explodes into chaos. But on the ridge, the Apache warriors freeze, watching. Coda steps forward slowly, gaze fixed on Jeremiah's silhouette in the firelight. Something breaks in his face. Something old and bitter melts away. He drops to one knee. Tala's breath catches. Coda bows his head and places a fist against the dirt. Tala whispers the meaning softly, awed. "He calls you brother." Behind them, 100 warriors lower their bows. Nobody fires, not one arrow. Ray sees it from the ranch yard, his eyes widening with something like hope or disbelief. Maybe both. Brant, for the first time, looks afraid. The war he tried to light has just slipped from his hands, and Jeremiah knows. There's no turning back now. Smoke rolls across the valley like a slow, dark tide. Firelight flickers along the ridge, casting long, broken shadows across the ground. The fake branded cattle scatter into the night. some on fire, some screaming, all of them running blind through the brush. Jeremiah stands where the pen used to be. The air burns his lungs. His coat smells of smoke and scorched hair. But he doesn't move. Not yet. Behind him, Tala's horse stamps nervously. She calls something to the warriors, a command shaped sharp as flint. They reposition along the ridge, no longer aiming at the ranch, only watching the chaos unfold. Below, Brant's men scramble like ants kicked out of their mound, yelling, cursing, loading rifles without aim or sense. Their panic fills the night louder than the fire does. Ray Hollis reappears through the haze, coughing hard. When he spots Jeremiah, relief flashes across his face, but fear follows right after. "You crazy bastard," Ray rasps. "Brant's going to kill you for this." Jeremiah doesn't look at him. He was going to anyway. Brant's voice cuts through the crackle of flames. He's shouting orders, wild, desperate. "Cut 'em off! Don't let those cows run toward town! Damn it, move!" But the herd is gone. Burning brands, burning lies, all of it running too fast to stop. Tala steps up beside Jeremiah. Smoke paints her face in streaks of gold and shadow. She watches the burning pen collapse into itself, jaw tight. "You chose fire," she says softly. Jeremiah nods. "Only thing that eats a lie clean." She studies him for a long moment, not with anger, not with pity, but with something deeper, something heavy. Respect threaded with fear for what he's become tonight. Below, Coda appears out of the smoke, expression unreadable. He stops 3 paces from Jeremiah. Then he kneels fully this time, no hesitation, and presses a fist to his chest, then to the ground. He speaks a single word in Apache. Tala whispers, "Brother." Jeremiah swallows hard. The word hits deeper than he expects, deeper than he wants. It knocks loose something in him, something small, damaged, clinging to silence for years. He looks away quickly. Fire reflects in his eyes. Ray comes beside him. "The ranch is going up. Won't be long before Brant tries something stupid." Jeremiah answers, "He already has." Brant proves the point immediately. He storms onto the porch, eyes wide, pistol in hand, fury shaking through him like fever. The flames throw red across his face, turning him into something feral. "You think this changes anything?" Brant roars. "Them savages will die for this. You'll hang with them." Ray steps between them before Brant can aim. "Put the gun down, Silas." Brant laughs, high and cracked. "You traitor! You goddamn coward traitor!" He swings the barrel toward Ray. "You think the army will believe your word over mine?" Ray doesn't flinch. "Not mine," he says. "Mine and his." He nods at Jeremiah. "And hers." He points toward Tala on the ridge. Brant's breath hitches when he sees Tala silhouetted against the fire, bow lowered but ready. Behind her, the Apache warriors stand still as stone. Brant looks from them to Jeremiah. "You threw your lot in with them," he spits. "You ain't even white. You're nothing." Jeremiah answers quietly. Tonight, that's more truth than you meant it to be. Brant snarls and fires. The shot goes wide. Rage makes a terrible aim. The bullet cracks against a fence post. Instantly, bowstrings draw behind Jeremiah. A warning, not yet a death sentence. Jeremiah steps forward before anyone fires back. His voice cuts through smoke and panic. No one moves. The command is simple, heavy, final. For a moment, the whole valley holds still. Brant stares at him, chest heaving, gun shaking. He's realizing, maybe too late, that this isn't a one-man rebellion he can stamp out. The story is bigger now, too big to bury in a shallow grave. The man, the cattle, the lie, they all burned together. Jeremiah raises his voice so every rifleman, every warrior, every shadow hears him. Those cattle were the proof you planned your own war. Brant swings the gun wildly. You have no proof now. You burned it yourself, you fool. Jeremiah steps closer. No, I burned the bait, not the trap. He glances toward Ray. He saw everything. Ray nods. Once. Hard. I'll testify. Brant's face collapses, anger turning into something smaller. Desperation. Fear. The night presses in. Smoke coils upward. Sparks fly like fireflies trying to escape. Tala speaks quietly beside Jeremiah. You ended the lie, but the man behind it still stands. Jeremiah nods, and for the first time, Brant looks like a man standing alone. A man who realizes the fire won't burn out before it reaches him. The fire dies down slow, leaving the air thick with smoke and the smell of burned wood. Brant stands near the porch, shoulders hunched, gun hand trembling. For the first time since Jeremiah's known him, he looks smaller than the land around him, smaller than the lie he built. Jeremiah doesn't move. Tala comes up behind him, bow lowered but ready. Ray stands on the opposite side, revolver still pointed at the ground, steady, not shaking anymore. Other townsfolk gather at the edge of the yard, lanterns in hand. Their faces flicker in the uncertain light. Fear, confusion, suspicion. None know exactly what's happened, but they know something has broken, something too big to ignore. Brant tries to pull himself together, straightening his back. All of you, listen, he shouts, voice raw. These savages came to kill us. They burned my herd. They tried to stampede cattle into town. No one answers him. The smoke clears enough for the Apache riders to become visible, a quiet line of shadows on horseback. Coda at the front, expression carved from granite. Behind him, the warriors sit motionless, but every one of them sees Brant clearly. Ray steps forward. Silas, he says softly, stop. Brant snaps toward him. You lied for me for years, he spits. You owe me. Ray lifts his chin. I owed the truth longer. A hush runs through the gathered townsfolk. Jeremiah feels Tala shift slightly beside him, like she's bracing for the next blow, whatever shape it takes. A ranch hand, One of Brant's newer hires steps forward nervously. "Mr. Brant, sir, those cattle never saw the real cross brand. That stamp we used didn't look right." Brant whirls on him. "Shut your damn mouth!" But the damage is done. Another hand speaks up. "He told us Apache stole Jeremiah's herd. Told us we were getting justice." His eyes shift to Jeremiah. "We didn't know it was a frame job. Not till tonight." Brant lunges toward him, but Ray intercepts, grabbing Brant's arm. "Enough," Ray growls. "Stop digging your own grave." Brant yanks free. His breathing grows louder, harsher, panic crawling across his face. He points at Jeremiah. "This is your fault. You brought them here. You brought this whole damn nightmare." Jeremiah stays silent. Brant spins on Tala. "And you, your people, every fire, every raid." Tala cuts him off. Calm, even, quiet as an arrow cutting air. "Say the truth," she says, "for once." Brant glares at her like lighting her on fire might save him. And then a sound cuts through the tense quiet. Hoofbeats. A single Apache warrior guides forward a bound man, Brant's own hired gun, the tall one with the red scarf. His face is swollen, his lip bleeds, fear pours off him like sweat. Coda shoves him toward the center of the yard. The man stumbles and hits the dirt hard. He looks at Brant, then at the Apache surrounding him. His mouth shakes uncontrollably. Jeremiah recognizes the look. A man who has run out of lies to hide behind. Coda says something sharp. Tala translates. "He will speak, or he will be judged without speaking." The hired gun starts babbling instantly. "I didn't want to. Brant made us. He paid extra. Said Apache attacked first. Said we just had to burn a ranch or two. Make it look right." He breaks into tears. "He said once the army believed it, we'd get land, money, protection." The yard goes dead quiet. Every settler, every warrior, every pair of eyes turns to Brant. Brant's face, red with fury moments ago, drains to gray. Jeremiah watches something collapse behind the man's eyes. A lifetime of swagger and authority cracking under its own weight. Ray speaks, voice steady. "Silas Brant, I'm placing you under arrest." He hesitates. "For murder, fraud, inciting war." Brant laughs once, dry, broken. "You think the army will believe Apache testimony and the word of a black rancher over mine?" Ray holsters his gun. "They won't need Apache testimony," he says. "They'll have mine." Coda lifts his spear, not in threat, judgment. The other warriors follow, a circle of solemn acknowledgement. Tala steps closer to Jeremiah. Her voice is low. This could have ended in fire on both sides, but it ends with truth. Jeremiah lets out a slow breath he didn't know he'd been holding. Brant tries one last time, one desperate, pathetic attempt, slipping a knife from his boot. But Ray's faster. He slams Brant to the ground, disarming him in one practiced motion. The townsfolk pull back in shock. The Apache do not move. They simply watch. Ray cuffs Brant with rope. Coda nods once. Approval, not submission. And for the first time, Jeremiah sees something in the air between the two groups. Not peace, not trust, but possibility. Tala turns to Jeremiah. Your fire tore down his lie, she says. But his fall, that belongs to everyone here. Jeremiah looks at the smoking remains of the pen. At least it's over. Tala shakes her head softly. No. Now we decide what comes after. 3 weeks pass. The wind shifts with the season, carrying the bite of cold mornings and warmer afternoons. Jeremiah's cabin stands where it always has, leaning slightly into the hillside, boards dry and weather-scarred. But it feels different now. Maybe it's the silence. Maybe it's the memory of 300 riders circling it at dawn. Or maybe it's what he lost and what he gained on the same night. He stands on the porch at sunrise, hands rough, shirt sleeves rolled, studying the empty pasture. The fire at Brant's ranch burned half the basin, including the grass his cattle would have fed on. He has fewer cows now, fewer supplies, fewer illusions. Mateo and Lucia play in the dirt nearby, chasing each other around a stump like the world hasn't changed. Their laughter cuts through the quiet like a warm knife. He lets it sit, lets it hold him, just for a moment. He breathes in. The air doesn't smell like kerosene anymore. Footsteps crunch along the path. Jeremiah turns. Tala approaches on horseback, reins loose in one hand, a small satchel tied behind her saddle. She rides without ceremony, no escort, no warriors in shadow. Just her. When she reaches him, she dismounts with the same silent grace she always carries. The children stop playing. Lucia hides half behind Jeremiah's leg. Mateo stares, unafraid. Tala gives them both a quiet nod, then turns to Jeremiah. I brought something, she says. She loosens the satchel and places it on the porch rail. He opens it. Inside are small clay pots, painted, sealed, each holding seeds. Corn, beans, squash, some he's never seen before. From the women of my band, Tala explains. They said grass burns fast, but food grows slow. They offered this for your children. Jeremiah runs a thumb along the rim of a pot. He swallows. They didn't have to. No, she agrees. That's why it matters. The wind picks up. Loose dust lifts and falls again. Jeremiah notices Tala's horse carry 2 small pouches tied near the saddle horn. Beadwork, Apache patterns. He nods toward them. Gifts? Trade. She glances at the cabin. From those who believe peace is worth the effort. He nods again, slower this time. Never thought I'd see that day. Tala studies the cabin door, still half open from the morning breeze. You leave it open now. Jeremiah shifts, one shoulder rising. Gets stuffy in there. She smiles, barely, but enough. Or maybe you're tired of hiding. He doesn't answer. Not because she's wrong, because she isn't. Tala walks a few steps into the yard. Matteo and Lucia wander toward her cautiously. She kneels, offering them each a small bead from a pouch. White stones, simple, familiar. Lucia clutches hers like a treasure. Matteo examines his, then pockets it with a grin. Jeremiah watches the three of them together, something heavy loosening in his chest. When Tala rises, she dusts her hands. My father will go before the council next week. Ray Hollis will testify when the army arrives. Your name will not be tied to the fires, nor mine. Jeremiah exhales, a long breath that seems to leave years behind it. Good. She steps closer, close enough he can see the tiny lines of dust on her cheekbone, the faint curve of a scar at her jaw. There will still be fear, she says, and anger, both sides, but they have less reason now. Jeremiah looks at the horizon. That's enough for me. Tala's gaze shifts to the open door again. You could close it still. Go back to the quiet. The walls. Jeremiah shakes his head once. No. Quiet ain't what I thought. For a long moment neither speaks. Then Tala touches the porch rail, fingers trailing lightly. If you need help again, she says, you know where my people camp in the spring. They help strangers now, he asks softly. They help those who help them first. A breeze moves between them, carrying the smell of the dry basin, the fading smoke, and something new, soil waiting to be turned. Tala mounts her horse in one smooth motion. Before she rides off, she looks down at him, eyes steady, unreadable in the old way but no longer distant. Thank you, Jeremiah Keene, she says, for stopping when you could have ridden past, for burning the lie that carried your name, for choosing truth when it cost you most. He lifts his chin. Thank you for giving me a chance. Tala nods once, then turns her horse toward the valley. As she rides away, dust rises behind her, but not as a warning. More like a line drawn on the earth, a path between two worlds that weren't meant to meet, yet did. Jeremiah watches until she disappears behind the ridge. The morning quiet settles again. Matteo tugs at his sleeve, wanting to plant the seeds. Lucia hides her bead in her pocket. Jeremiah steps back into the cabin. He doesn't close the door. Not today. Not anymore.